right, we're going to call to order the March 20th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, the Redevelopment Successor Agency, and the West Sacramento Financing Authority. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance, so we invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight's going to be led by Lisa Baker of the Yolo County Housing Authority. Right, and Council Member Sandine informs me that Ms. Baker has received a distinction, an honor last evening, and maybe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The League of California Cities, the Women's Caucus, recognized Lisa for her, Ms. Baker, for her wonderful work as a woman of persistence, and she, I believe, received the award last night at the City of Winters Council meeting. Congratulations to Ms. Baker.
Congratulations, Lisa. Ms. Baker's been we know her as a woman of persistence here in West Sacramento, and so many great things in our community have resulted from her never giving up on meeting the mission of housing for all in our community and throughout the county. So thanks for being with us, Lisa. Right, the council did meet in closed session this evening to confer with our legal counsel regarding one item of existing litigation. I'm sorry. We have that one item of Mr. Tim. Which one's which?
I'm sorry. We have three items of litigation. We have the exposure litigation under the October 10, 2018 letter from Scott Rafferty. Existing litigation, the People's Vanguard of Davis versus the City of West Sacramento, and existing litigation, City of West Sacramento and the people of the state versus R&L Business Management. All
right, there were no items taken on the first two, no action taken on the first two items, but there was action taken on the third. So, Mr.
Yes,
Attorney?
in closed session, the City Council approved a settlement with one of the defendants in the City of West Sacramento and people of State of California versus R&L Business Management, which involves contamination at the former site of Capital Plating. Under the settlement, the defendants agreed to transfer to the city a note and deed of trust with a face value of $299,000 for $199,000. And that's the report.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us then to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the Council on this or any other agenda item this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and to turn the card into the City Clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard, and so we ask that all testimony be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Also in front of the clerk is an analog flip chart from the 70s that simply indicates which agenda item the council is currently considering. The clerk accepts the speaking cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. So, for example, if we're here for item 5, once the staff presentation is complete and the questions, public testimony, and or council discussion have begun, we don't take any additional speaking cards at that point. So if you're here about a specific agenda item, please be sure to get the card in before the conclusion of the staff report, but you can turn it in at any time as well. We also recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can be equivalent to having allergies and cause hives and discomfort. And so we do ask that there not be any boos or cat calls or actually even any applause or other demonstrations, and we try to maintain a civil discourse here in the chambers. So item 1A is up first. As is noted on our agenda, state law prohibits the council from taking action or having any significant discussion about items that are brought up under item 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. And we do have 2 requests to speak under item 1. The first is by Ramona Van Sickle. Yeah, come on up. And our city clerk informs me that our overhead projector is not working this evening. And so, Ms. Van Sickle, you provided photos, and so we're going to share them up here, pass them among the council members, so we will see what you have. Welcome.
Hello. Hello, my name is Ramona. I have lived in West Sacramento for most of my life. At the moment, I live on Linden Acres, which is on Linden Road, between Spruce Avenue and Redwood Avenue. My house is in the middle between the 2 streets. There's 3 homes there. We have mailboxes, the old school mailboxes that we literally have to walk up to get our mail. On March the 1st of this year, between 1:30 in the afternoon, all 3 of our mailboxes were hit by a moving car going east toward the river, which took down all the mailboxes to the ground. The car also took down my neighbor's handicap handrail bar and her rolls of solar lights. It also barely missed my husband's truck on our driveway. This car actually drove on our front yard. We are all senior citizens living in these homes, while one of my neighbors is handicapped. This is very scary for all of us. I have become so scared for myself and for my handicapped neighbor that we do not get our mail anymore. My poor husband has to do that for us. I believe speed, heavy traffic, and how the road narrows right into our mailboxes and into our walking path is the problem. I have seen drivers speed over 50 miles per hour and have seen cars pass another car on the same lane. The traffic condition on the east side end toward the river on Linden Road has gotten bad after all of the road construction and the opening of Village Parkway. When I say the Linden Road is much narrower in front of my house, is because it is. For example, after the Lady of Grace School on Linden Road, coming toward my direction, it is nice and very wide with 2 stop signs. But soon after Spruce Avenue, the road suddenly gets very narrow, and there is where we live, and there is where our mailboxes are placed. By the way, this is not my first time dealing with this problem. My mailbox was hit about 2 years ago by a car very late at night. I got up in the morning, and there was my mailbox all over my yard. I see opportunities that might be helpful. For example, pole monitor electronic speed boards. It would be nice to have one placed nearby where I live, like the one in Washington Boulevard. Maybe speed bumps or more stop signs. How about police patrolling more often? I'm sure all of you know about the situation with the speed, the traffic, and the road, and what is happening all around West Sacramento. Done?
Yeah, if you have a sentence or 2 left, but yeah, I need to ask you to wrap up.
Okay. I'm just fearful for what is happening, and I would like to bring this to your attention to please help with the 3 conditions that I said: the speed, the narrow of the road, and, I just love my home and I want to stay here, and please help me out so I won't be so scared to get my mail. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. And City Manager, if you'll give us an update on the analysis of the situation. Part of our challenge, and I know when we redid Park Boulevard and several other streets, that widening a road will usually result in faster speeds. It provides a little bit more room for the car, but that quickly gets internalized to faster speeds. And so we're often faced with these trade-offs. But the trailer, for example, could go out, and we would be able to at least get an assessment of what's happening in terms of speed in the situation. So appreciate it if you could provide a report back to the council.
Yes, thanks.
Okay. And next is Forest Gardens.
Hello. Hi. Usually, I'm pretty plugged into the community, and I was thinking the other day that usually I come up because I have some kind of problem or some kind of issue, and I can't think of any. Right now the city's doing really good. Everything in Brighton Broderick seems to be okay. We did have some shots fired earlier today, and the West Sacramento Police Department did an awesome response that took quick, measured, corrective actions. The shots were close to what would be an elementary school up there. I don't want to say any names, but the thing is that the school is going to be coming out, and they're going to be putting in social workers into the schools tomorrow, so that if anybody wants any help or connections, that they're plugging those folks in. So that was that's a thumbs up there. Good job. I touched base with all of the mobile home parks, and everybody seems to be doing okay there. Hallelujah. I was like, oh my goodness. Then I got into Kid Zone, which is an after-school program for my son, and it really, really is awesome. I mean, that's just another 2 thumbs up on that side. It takes so much pressure off of me to try to figure out how I'm going to, make all this fly. And the Park and Recreation Department is just, I mean, they're facilitating it just awesomely. And do you want to tell them what you do at Kid Zone? Come on. You want to say anything? Well, they do a little bit of homework, and what else do they do? You guys play games? You get tickets when you guys are good? Yeah? What else?
I don't know.
He doesn't know. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. And I just want to kind of come by and just say, good job, everybody. And we're seeing the hard work that's being done, and I really appreciate it, you guys.
Thanks, Forrest. Thanks, both of you. And enjoy Kid Zone. It really is a terrific program, so thank you so much for coming tonight. All right, that brings us into item 1B, which is council communications and reports. And just as a reminder, this section of our agenda is for the purpose of providing reports back from the various agencies and boards and organizations to which each of us represents the council. And I know we've had some. We had a fairly extensive set of reports last time that were more in the nature of kind of the activities that we've each undertaken in the last couple of weeks. But this section is not a report to the community. It's a report back to the council, to each of us as we represent the city and the council at these particular boards and other outside organizations to which we are the delegated representatives. So, are there reports of that nature this evening? Councilmember Guerrero.
Yes, I did receive a request by the California League of Cities for recognition on the importance of the 2020 census and every person counts. The 2020 census is very important for us to be able to secure additional federal and state funding on a per capita basis. And they want to be able to host. There's going to be a kickoff event in the Capitol by the state on April 2nd. And so just wanted to let you all know and continue to keep you informed if you want to be able to, if you want to participate in that. There will be a proclamation prepared recognizing that the city is very supportive of that. Wanted to bring that to your attention. Also wanted to let you know that I have been appointed to the League of California City Sacramento Valley Division Board of Directors. And on March 11th, we had a brief meeting to discuss updates in the region. The next meeting is scheduled on March 22nd from 11 to 3 in West Sacramento, where they will hold their next lunch program at Burgers and Brew and tour the region, including the barn, to showcase the city's progress since they last visited, I understand, about 11 years ago. So presentations will be provided by Aaron and Katie on our EFD housing and what our progress has been under economic development. And so the next update is on YOLO Habitat Conservancy. They met last Monday. We accepted a report submitted to the state's controller by the Yolo County Department of Financial Services. And we also reviewed the modified format of the budget, which breaks down expenditures by grants. We approved the revised consulting group contract due to increased volume of permit applications process. And we met with the new staff representatives from the Yolo County Habitat Conservancy Plan. And they are very involved, a lot of history, intelligence in the area that we're going to need them to approve permits. We also have an application out for the management services, and so the deadline is going to be in the end of March. There have been a few inquiries regarding the request. And so we also approved a policy to accept early payment of the YOLO mitigation fees. In addition, we approved an updated description of the Implementation Advisory Committee role, and we can submit a nomination from West Sacramento for membership on the Implementation Advisory Committee. So I would like to have any recommendations you have so that we can submit those names to the Executive Director by April 15th.
For city representatives?
Yes, city representatives.
Okay. If you can forward the appointment of city representatives, if you could forward them to me, and then I'd bring them back to the council.
Okay, that'll be great. Okay, and I've also asked for any, at the YOLO Habitat, who they've been working with, anybody that they've been able to touch base with in West Sacramento, that they can give us some names. And let's see. Just wanted to also add that yesterday, it was great being with everyone here at the Grand Gateway celebration. It was really nice to be able to, be present for this historic event, and also hear from the Sacramento Poet Laureate Jeff Knorr, who recited a poem. It was a very enlightening experience, and being able to see the poetry engraved on the sidewalk. I also attended the Mercy Coalition recognition for the volunteers. There's been more than 2,600 volunteer hours to provide 75 nights of shelter to our guests at the Warming Center. And I'd like to recognize their work with a resolution or a proclamation, because they have been very successful in the community for the work that they have accomplished. So I'd like to submit a request for recognition for them and bring them, in to provide an update.
We have one pending. The County Board of Supervisors and the city are in process on that resolution now, because for the great work of the coalition.
Great. And and there's another resolution request by the California Fuel Cell Partnership. So I have submitted the information over to Aaron, and they will have a celebration of the 2019 California Fuel Cell Partnership. It'll be its 20th anniversary of collaboration here, and with their involvement here in the city. And that concludes my report.
All right. Councilmember Sandin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Yolo Solano AQMD, Air Quality Management District, met on March 13th, and we approved accepting grant funding from the California Air Resources Board. And we also received briefings on the 2018 ozone season, the district's hearing board process, and the Air Resources Board Agricultural Equipment Survey. And then earlier today, Yolo County Housing met, and we approved the fiscal year 2019 annual plan and the fiscal year 2019 capital fund for submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And we also received from the Woman of Persistence, Ms. Baker, an initial orientation to Yolo County Housing, as there were a number of new board members, including myself. And then I also was able to tour West Sacramento Housing Development Corporation properties last week, and it was helpful as I began service on the corporation's board. And Mr. Mayor, and I have one other update, but I'd love your feedback given your earlier statement about keeping this to kind of board and commission appointments we have in service of the council. So I also had a chance, and I would love your feedback after I give this update, if this is a yes or no. I had a chance to visit the Mercy Coalition's pilot warming center program last week that was at Lighthouse Covenant Church. And I was able to speak with clients, volunteers, and staff. Mark Sawyer, who's our city's homeless coordinator, was also there that night and meeting with clients to go over their exit plans as the warming center pilot wraps up. I believe it's today or this week. And I understand the council will be receiving a full briefing on the project soon, but I appreciated being able to see the program firsthand. So is that the kind of thing, or yes or no?
So our custom and practice has been reports that deal directly with these boards and commissions, our assignments. There were essentially report backs, because we have been empowered, whether at the Habitat Conservancy or at SACOG or at the Yolo County Housing Authority, to make votes, to take actions on behalf of the council. And so the purpose of this section of the agenda is to make sure that, where appropriate, in advance, we're letting each other know what it is that's happening, so that we can say, that sounds crazy. Are you doing that? Or let me know how I can help in this other agency that I'm on.
Right, it connects with something else,
correct.
Perhaps.
And then also to report back afterwards what happened.
Right.
But we have also, I think it's also been our convention, custom and practice, to report back on sort of policy-related things for the council. So that I think we've had plenty of those kinds of reports. Where I did this study mission, or I attended this workshop, or I went to this pilot program launch, and here's what I saw that ought to be of interest to the council. I think this section has gotten longer over the last 3 years, in part because I think it's been more of, here's all the things that I've attended, and here's all the people I want to give a shout out to. And this is not a report to the community. It is a report back to the colleagues for the purpose of policymaking in the future. So we don't have there's not hard and fast rules at play, and it's not my intention to signal I'm going to start banging the gavel and ruling folks out of order at every possible digression from that structure, but simply to ask that we remain within those boundaries, in part for each other and in part for our guests who come in, and we've had a couple of
It could be an
45-minute
hour talking
item
about all of
1Bs.
things we've done. Right,
because we have an extraordinarily busy council that's really out there in the community and elsewhere. So, and I'm about to give a long one too. So this is physician heal thyself. So I'm doing the same. So I have a couple reports. First, the Livable Communities Action Team of AARP, on which I represent all the cities in California for AARP, and it's a result of the work that Councilmember Sandine and our former colleague Mark Johannesson did on the city's pioneering age-friendly action plan. So this is the group within AARP that's charged with advocating, developing, and then advocating for policies that support livable communities for all ages. And it's been a very progressive group around climate issues and transportation issues and what have you. So this meeting, there was an extended debate about parking. Really, several members of the team were there to brought forward the latest research on the deleterious effects of too much parking and the significant effect on affordable housing. A lot of the issues that we have dealt with here in the city before, and some of the strategies both that locals are doing, but also, as usual at these AARP meetings, somebody wants the state to pass a law to make us, have less parking in West Sacramento, as an example. And my role in the conversation, just to report back, is to say yes, and or yes, but, which is that we are trying to all get to this policy objective of significantly reduced parking costs and infrastructure and space used for parking, what have you. But when the state mandates it, it can't see the particular local circumstances that, in some instances, the environmentally sustainable, socially equitable thing to do, especially for some temporary period of time, is build parking. And so it's very difficult for the legislature to see the difference between West Sacramento and Tustin in Orange County. And so the extent to which the legislature can send signals through grant programs and other incentives, it's valuable. But I've been counseling ARP to not hop on the bandwagon of having all local planning decisions being made in the capital. So that was a major discussion and debate at AARP. We also had we're working on a better decision-making metrics around social equity. And ARP is actually doing quite a good job in trying to scope this out in a way that is actionable and practical for communities and for its own chapters on the field. And then lastly, kind of on spur of the moment, because of the social equity conversation, they asked me to present on VIA and the West Sacramento On Demand with VIA service. Fortunately, I carry Sarah Strand's slides with me everywhere, so I'm like, I'm ready. I can do an 11-slide PowerPoint right now. And it was life-changing for the members of the Livable Communities Action Team statewide. I think they had to see it twice. Because they couldn't believe the impacts on the feeling of independence, the feeling of greater independence that 70 or 80% of seniors are reporting, and many of the other indicators as well. So there was a lot of interest in that project. The second is that last weekend, the Local Government Commission and CalCog, which is the California Association of Councils of Government, SACOG is a member of that, as well all the other COGs in California, held their annual conference in Yosemite. And I was asked to come up and present also on microtransit and the innovations there as an environmental sustainability, land use planning innovation. And same thing, it was an 8:30 presentation, but in the morning. But there was a lot of interest in the rest of California and what's happening in West Sacramento. A lot of surprise that not that we're doing it, but that the kind of the impacts that it's having in the community are so profound, both in mobility and in a bunch of other social and economic indicators that we care about. Excuse me. Last week was the Board of Directors for the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, in which I represent the city. And as the council knows, this week, the Greater Sacramento Economic Council and Applied Spectra announced that Applied Spectra, which is a major technology firm in the Bay Area, is relocating its global headquarters and facility to here in West Sacramento. It's a big win. It's a significant number of jobs and investment, and it's the kinds of jobs. Each time we bring additional technology jobs to the city, it makes our competitiveness for the next ones stronger. Because one of the number one concerns that technology companies have had is that they can't recruit local talent. and that there isn't an ecosystem of talent and networks for technologists to join when they get here. And so this is a very significant win for us, and GSAC was involved in that as well, as I say. The GSAC board met, and we got a very sensitive debrief on the Amazon HQ2 story from the folks out in New York and some of the major site selection firms. I didn't hear anything in that presentation that ended up undermining our position, which has been we're not really doing lots of gigantic incentives and tax breaks and stuff because we don't have that kind of money. We're just trying to be a good place to live and work and get your projects built and operated. But I think it was a good lesson for the region because a lot of folks thought, if we had just offered $5 more, maybe we would have gotten Amazon. And I've never believed that, but this was definitely a big debate there, and the New York experience, I think, reinforced a lot of that. And an update on the Major League Soccer work by Kevin Nagel, who's the point person, along with Ron Burkle in Southern California, on moving that project forward, and the Future Mobility Center that SMUD is leading on behalf of the region, including some of the work that will overlap with our streetcar reanalysis as well. So productive session there. Then finally, I attended South by Southwest at the Civic Innovation Summit that is put on for roughly a dozen mayors each year at South by Southwest, whose cities are in the innovation and technology space. And did two presentations there, one of which will make no sense. I was on a panel with the leading music festival in Germany and the ambassador from the European Union around the role of music festivals around the world in promoting economic development and social equity. So I told a lot of TBD Fest stories, but it was useful in terms of building some relationships with other concert and music organizations and promoters around the world who want to take a look at our region and in West Sacramento in particular to fill the gap that has been left since TBD Fest went away. And then I was invited to do a panel on economic dislocation and how Americans in regular places like West Sacramento are experiencing today's economy in real terms, not just statistics. So myself with folks from the American Enterprise Institute, the Brookings Institution, and the Aspen Institute, unpacking some of the data and some of the stories in that space. Also had a presentation on from Ethical OS on how cities can do better at the ethical deployment and use of technology systems, data included, but not only data. And I'm going to hand this over to the city manager, the framework of the presentation. It's dense, but there are a lot of issues for us to be examining as a city that we're not on the bleeding edge, but at least on the leading edge of many of these issues, particularly as things like neuro implants become more regular, and facial recognition technology that's already here. A lot of issues that are really critical for cities, which few cities have seriously considered, and the implications for both like amazing public services and great responsiveness, and for privacy and other questions are out there. And so we're now starting to get developed some frameworks and toolboxes and protocols for how cities might do a better job in that space as well. And with a particular attention right now because of what's been happening across the river on the policing side as well, and it's because policing is also an area where technology and data have been very effectively deployed in advance of some other departments in many cases. Generally, I don't necessarily just mean in West Sacramento. And so taking a step back as the policymakers to think about what some of the ethical issues are around what's already here, but also what's coming is a very useful policy conversation for us and others to have. And then lastly, I was a judge for the Civic Technology Startup Pitch Competition. And this is an annual competition that we have where startups who are at South by Southwest that are developing or recently implemented technologies that are in the civic space that can help cities with some of their problems and needs and opportunities, pitch to mayors, and we then pick winners about which ones are the most promising. So, for example, we heard from a firm that is developing augmented reality training systems at scale for police and fire. We heard from a firm called Cloud9 that is working, that has a system to connect officers in the field with high-level mental health professionals on demand via iPad in the field in certain instances, and then connect them to a broader range of services than that can be had simply by a ride-along. So that's actually the winner of the competition, and I've got some additional materials on that I can share with the manager and the chief as well. An interesting but maybe challenging one around looking at the street networks in the city and safe driving. This is a company called ODN, and they focus on trying to map all of the routes that are taken in a city, and then map them against how dangerous they are from an accident or injury perspective. And they make their money, though, by selling that information to insurance companies, with the idea being that insurance companies can then rate customers based on where they're driving as opposed to what their race is or the neighborhood in which they live. So that's the idea. As a judge, I didn't vote for this one because the dangerousness of your trip is highly correlated to your race and income and where you live. So it's not really a solution. It's just putting data in front of something of a phenomenon and pretending that now it's unbiased because it's numbers. But it was interesting, and I think we're going to see more and more of these where services for cities are just as much services for other private companies who have their own interests that we're going to have to look out for, and that's why that ethical OS conversation is so important. So that's it from South by Southwest. It's always been a really useful session, and even at this one, there was a lot of interest. I think next year we're going to be asked to do a panel on VIA because it seems like everyone in the country is just fascinated. Because, as I said last time we met, most microtransit pilots in the country are failing, and ours is not only succeeding; it's succeeding beyond our wildest dreams. And so, there's a lot of stories to be told, and a lot of help that we can get to keep scaling that program up. All right, Councilmember Orozco, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco, did you have any reports? And you probably didn't hear my admonition at the beginning. I was just a reminder that this section of our agenda, 1B, is principally for the purpose of reporting back on the boards and commissions that we sit on and other policy-related matters back to the council as opposed to as a report to the community. And I was just reminding ourselves of that when we got started. But thank you for coming. I know you had multiple commitments, but appreciate you being here.
Right, and I appreciate the admonition. In general terms, I have a lot of exposure to the community, having small children. So, coming from the snack bar late last night and heading home, that's my experience. But I'll skip some of the community stuff, but I will say that as part of the Youth Empowerment Summit, I know Councilmember Sandine and I attended on behalf of West Sacramento last year. This year we had good representation from West Sacramento, and I really enjoy doing that because it involves approximately 100 kids that are from the region, and they really do give us a lens of what they think policies should change from their lens, which is to me a little bit different than the traditional lens that we have sitting up here at the dais every day, or every 2 weeks rather. But there was a lot of great feedback, and I've passed that on to our Washington Unified School Board President Jackie Wong, who was also in attendance. But we all had the opportunity to hear from different kids, and there were a lot of positive feedback from River City High School. And so with that, I look forward to hopefully influencing Justice Salinas and maybe having a rotating youth empowerment summit, so that way we could have here, a lot of it was transportation from West Sacramento to Woodland. So we had a small faction of very talented and bright kids from River City who were giving their feedback. But what I'd like to see is having it come to West Sacramento and our being the host here in either the Galleria or some other local place, or maybe just finding funding for a bus so we can get a lot larger groups out there to Woodland to participate in the program. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 1C, we have no appointments this evening, so we're going to proceed to the consent agenda, which is items 2, 3, and 4. Are there any items to remove or any items for separate question or comment? If not, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Orozco and seconded by Councilmember Guerrero. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. That brings us to our time-set agenda, item 5, which is a public hearing and first reading of ordinance 19-2 regarding a development agreement for a proposed wholesale cannabis distribution facility at 2545 Boatman Avenue.
Good evening, Mayor Cabalden and members of the council. This item is a request for a development agreement for a wholesale cannabis distribution facility located at 2545 Boatman Avenue. The company proposing this is Bravo Distro, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of High Hampton, which is a company that also owns several additional cannabis businesses within California. The project is located in an approximately 10,100 square foot freestanding building on a site zoned M1. The project shares access with a building to the east and a multi-tenant building located to the south. The business would not impede access to the existing businesses or their parking. The building would be secured with fencing on the northern and eastern sides. No additional fencing is required on the other sides as the walls of the buildings on that side are solid. No customers would come to the business. There will be no signage on the business with the exception of an address. Revenue contributions to the city for this application per the development agreement are set at 2.5% of gross sales on the first $50 million. This is consistent with other cannabis distribution businesses that have been approved within the city. The Planning Commission on February 21st did approve the CUP for this project and did recommend approval of the development agreement to the council. Staff from police and fire have toured the facility and offered some suggestions to the applicants regarding the facility itself, and the applicant has worked diligently with staff from PD on their safety and security plan, and that plan would be approved by police prior to opening of the facility. That concludes my presentation. The management team from Bravo Distro is here and I believe has a short presentation for you. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you at this time.
Are there questions for staff at this time before we open the public hearing?
It's a very quick question.
Councilmember Sandin?
The adjacent businesses you mentioned during the CUP process, they were all notified of the upcoming action?
Yes, they were.
Okay, thanks.
And their response overall?
We had no responses from any of the surrounding businesses. The applicant did reach out, canvass the neighborhood, and did speak individually to as many of the business owners as they were able to get in touch with.
Okay, and I'd be interested to hear any feedback from them as well. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, then with that, we're going to open the public hearing on item 5, and we do have 2 requests to speak. They're by Michael Harvey and Michael Gates. And so your team, so I'll let you do in whatever order you wish. Welcome.
Thank you. And good evening. And thank you, Mayor, City Council, and the City of West Sac for allowing us to present. My name is Michael Harvey. I'm the COO of Bravo Distro. I bring over 20 years of corporate supply chain distribution experience in the alcohol industry. I've been fortunate to work with the 2 largest distributors in the United States. I am also the co-founder of River, one of the co-founders of River Distribution. I initiated their conditional use permit here in West Sac. This is my 3rd conditional use permit that I've been involved with in West Sac in almost 10 years. It's a privilege to be personally involved with MRSA and Prop 64, the legislation and the language related to transportation. distribution, taxation, and testing. I'm also was a part of negotiating the first labor peace agreement with the Teamsters. And the role really hasn't changed for the distributor. Our objectives here are public safety, is safely and securely delivering product or transporting product to the marketplace with trained professional personnel. Consumer health, and that's testing the quality assurance of goods and quarantining any product that does not meet labeling packaging standards. Chain of custody and preventing an unbroken chain of custody and preventing diversion to illicit markets and minors. Our team brings a vast amount of experience in different areas of the business, and we're here to do what we do best in the city of West Sac. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Were you the one who did the canvassing among the neighboring businesses by any chance? Or was it you or somebody else that did that?
Yes, actually, several of our team did. They spoke with Chando's, Bike Dog. They had a couple of set downs and good positive feedback for the most part. A few individuals we were able to talk with directly just kind of gave support, but was not necessarily negative. So yeah, we've had good feedback.
Okay, good to know. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is your colleague also going to speak? Or?
Hi, I'm Michael Gates. My company, Sacramento Design Systems. We put together the plans for that, went in through the planning department. We were the ones that worked with the staff to try to move this along. I'm just here just to answer any questions. We're going to be putting together the plans for the construction documents to get the permit. So we're just here to answer any questions. Thanks.
I have a question.
All right,
Actually, I think it's
Ambrosco?
for Michael Harvey. Mr. Harvey? There are people in the community that have concerns about cannabis information being marketed to minors, and you'd mentioned it just a moment ago in your presentation. Does your company have any plans to participate in any educational outreach to ensure that people have the appropriate information before they make choices?
That would be a great program to be involved with. Prop 64 brought on the California Community Reinvestment Grants programs. So it's a great program to be involved with. Maybe not us individually as a company, but if there's a program already moving that we can get involved with and get involved with the community, it would be great.
So you would be open to that?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then with that, we're going to close the public hearing and return to the council for further questions or comments.
Yes, I do have some
Councilmember
comments.
Guerrero.
I do notice that this is a business that does carry some risks associated with it. Regardless, we do all we can, but there are a significant amount of public safety measures we need to take. And I appreciate, the revenue source, but I do want to make sure, I do want to find a way to dedicate funding from this source for public safety issues, both police and fire. I think that, out of all of our local services, they would be, our first responders need to be prepared. And I'd like to, make sure as we move forward in assessing the risk. This is not going to be the first place that this has happened. But I'd like a partnership with the cannabis distribution facilities to incorporate an assessment of that so that we on City Council can be prepared in advance and not wait for something bad to happen in our community so that we can measure and scale what we can do to shore up the resources and, respond quickly. And I think that, for me, builds a stronger partnership.
Right. I think, as council is aware, the revenue from the cannabis facilities that we have approved, none of which are retail distribution. Just for clarification, we've approved only on the industrial and distribution side, industrial distribution. All of the revenues have been going to cover our expenses related to police and fire, our revenues. In addition to that, each and every one of the facilities must essentially do whatever the police and fire departments say needs to be done, including providing support, equipment, reports, everything else. And so these are not high-risk facilities because we are following best standards of practice across the state, and we have a wealth of experience in industrial development in West Sacramento. Before cannabis, we've had explosive ammonium factories. We've had all sorts of pharmaceutical factories. We've had all the materials whose chemicals I cannot name. Volatile. We've had all kinds of other drugs. So this is not a new field for the city of West Sacramento, and in fact, in most cases, this is less so. So we're very familiar with how to regulate, and our police and fire departments, our emergency services personnel, our hazmat personnel are all quite familiar with how, and they've gone through additional trainings just on cannabis itself. So I don't want to leave any impression that we're entering into parts unknown and anything could possibly happen. Anything can happen, but that's true for virtually any of the uses in any of the warehouses or production facilities in the city, and it's why over the 100 years that the port and other industrial facilities, I should say 125 years since the salmon cannery was here, that we have developed one of probably the deepest set of protocols. There probably isn't a fire department in the region, for example, that's better at this than ours. It's one of the reasons why when the governor's proposal for shipping oil via train, not his proposal, sorry, he was supposed to do it too, but the oil trains that came through, it was our police chief, our fire chief, and our police department and fire department that were first to be called in this area because we have so much experience in dealing with virtually every sort of possible material that could be stored or distributed here in West Sacramento. Without the revenues from these development agreements that we have been entering into, we would be in a world of hurt with respect to even the baseline compensation for our staff, including police and fire. So let me make no mistake about it. This is an essential part of our strategy to be able to pay competitive wages to our entire staff, but especially including police and fire. And all of those protections are included and perfected in the agreement that our staff and our attorney have negotiated, not just in this case, but in case after case after case after case, because we're one of the leaders in the region in how to approach this work. So just want to be clear. Mayor Pro Tem Gorosco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. About 15 years ago, when I started prosecuting cases for the Sacramento County DA's office, the first cases we were given are hand-to-hand sales of marijuana and other controlled substances. And so I'm programmed and conditioned to take a certain side when it comes to issues like this. With that said, when we first received a DA request, and it came before me, obviously my prejudices were at the forefront. With that said, after further education and a tour of the facility, and just having the opportunity to learn more about manufacturing, distribution, even indoor cultivation to some extent, I will admit that I've had a change of heart with respect to the way I view these companies and businesses. And I have all full faith and confidence in our police department and our fire department, who has been at the forefront in reviewing the security plans and ensuring that the businesses will not have any type of enhanced security risk. Obviously, my concern was, whether or not the trucks were going to have a, marijuana logo on the side or some type of indicator. I mean, I even picked an issue with a name. I think we had an applicant before us, and it was, I don't remember what the name was, but it was like high. It had the word high in it, and I thought, no, I don't like that. But whether or not the business is one that could be detected as one that does business in cannabis, or whether or not there's any other indicators. Those are things that I'm looking for. And I know our chief of police and our officers and our chief of fire, they go to these facilities and check them out to make sure that everything is secure and there's no odors and there's no threat to our community. So with that, I have the confidence moving forward on this issue.
All right, so we have it before us tonight for first reading, which still requires a motion.
Move to approve.
All right.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Guerrero and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. Seeing no further debate or discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I'd like to inform our guests that the second reading and adoption of ordinance 19-2 is tentatively scheduled for April 3rd, 2019. All right, thank you. That brings us then to item 6, which is public hearing and consideration of Resolution 1913, establishing fees for micromobility, and second reading and adoption of Ordinance 19-3, amending Title 5, Business Licenses and Regulation, and Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic of the Municipal Code relating to micromobility operation. Mr. Doherty.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Chris Doherty from the Public Works Department. The item before you this evening is a public hearing to consider Resolution 19-13 to establish the fees for the micromobility operations within the city, and the second reading of Ordinance 19-13, amending Title 5 and Title 10 relating to micromobility. These two items are consistent with the first reading of the ordinance 19-3 and the workshop on micromobility fees that we had in front of council on February 20th. And there have been no additions or changes to the content of the report or to the ordinance. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Are there questions for staff?
No questions.
This time? Okay, thank you, Mr. Doherty.
Thank you.
We don't for the public hearing on item 6. We don't have any requests to speak, but because it is a public hearing, would anyone like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and return to council for any further questions or discussion or for a motion.
Move to approve.
Yes.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Guerrero and seconded by Councilmember Sandin. Seeing no further debate or discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Brings us to item 7, which is consideration of Resolution 19-21, approving a purchase and sale agreement for the sale of city-owned property, a CDBG loan agreement, and a city loan agreement for acquisition of private property, and approving a relocation plan, all for a proposed permanent supportive housing project, and approving environmental documentation pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act and Resolution 19-22, authorizing an appropriation of community development block grant and housing trust funds for the acquisition of property, relocation support, and structure demolition related to a permanent supportive housing project. Mr. Huerta.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm here this evening to request council approval for Resolution 19-21 and 19-22, both related to the development of a permanent supportive housing project. As the mayor noted, Resolution 19-21 requests approval of various agreements with Mercy Housing for the sale of a city-owned property and the acquisition of a private adjacent site, along with relocation of existing tenants and demolition of the existing structures. Resolution 19-22 appropriates the city monies to fund the project agreements. The project is unique in that it will provide the city's first permanent supportive housing units available to individuals who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness. As permanent supportive housing, the project would offer on- and off-site supportive services to its residents, which would include, among others, case management, peer support activities, mental health care, substance use services, and basic housing retention skills. Additional partners for the permanent supportive housing project include the Yolo County Health and Human Services Agency, which will play an integral role in providing and coordinating the supportive services, and Yolo County Housing, which recently awarded 60 project-based vouchers for the project itself. The total development cost of the project are estimated at $32 million, of which approximately $2.9 million would come from city funds. This represents approximately 9% of the total development cost for the project. City funds would come from community development block grant monies and private foundation monies awarded to the city for the permanent supportive housing project. We currently have a written commitment of funds from Partnership Health Plan in the amount of $914,444, and we are also in active discussions with Sutter Health to match Partnership's commitment of funds for the project. Lastly, I would like to point out that the city funds would help leverage the remaining development funds, which at this time would come from HCD's No Place Like Home funding, the Affordable Housing Program from the Federal Home Loan Bank, and 9% low-income housing tax credits. This concludes my presentation. Staff is available for any additional questions.
All right, there's a lot here in terms of the project and the financing, and it has come a long way. And I want to just give a tip of the hat to staff, to the city manager in particular. Before he was the city manager, this was a passion project for him, and it died several times. These are really hard projects to do. Affordable housing projects generally are really hard. This is especially hard to do. And he brought this forward before there was No Place Like Home, and wouldn't let it die, and the team wouldn't either. And what we have here is a very creative, and we will not give up financing strategy. So the specific policy conversation we're about to have aside, just kudos to the manager and to the economic and development and housing staff and the other staff who have collaborated with you on putting something together that's this important and this complicated. So, Councilmember Sandin.
Thank you, and thank you for, as the mayor said, for all the work to you and the team and partners for getting us here. It is a really needed project with very complicated funding, and I just have a couple of questions so that I can understand what's before us tonight. And one of those is about the Housing Trust Fund. So if we make this loan, what's the opportunity cost? Like, what might we be missing out on? And if the funding doesn't fall into place, what does that mean?
Correct. So as we noted in the staff report, we don't have the full commitment from the Sutter Health Foundation monies, which would be the missing piece of the puzzle. And because of that, and because of the need to move the project forward at this time, we are recommending that we temporarily use Housing Trust Fund to cover that missing piece. In our conversations with Sutter Health, they have been excited about participating in the project, but we don't have a written commitment at this time. So it is a decision that the council will have to take because in the event that the Sutter Health monies don't come in, we would be using Housing Trust monies for the project. There could be some additional other funding sources that we could use aside from Housing Trust Fund, but at this time we are recommending that we use Housing Trust Fund, primarily because of Sutter's initial, at least verbal commitment that they were in support of the project.
Okay, that's my initial set of questions. Thanks.
But then the second part was, what would be the potential opportunity costs of using that money? And then are there other sources of funding outside of Sutter that we could consider?
So we have spoken with Dignity Health. We have also spoken with Kaiser Permanente as additional potential private foundation sources. At this time, both of them have expressed that they are not providing funding or they don't have availability of funds, or they are focusing their efforts on other activities. So the only two interested parties at this point are Partnership Health, which we have a written commitment, and Sutter Health.
If I could chime in just briefly on that. In terms of local funding, the other option could be Measure E funds as a potential source that would take over the bridge funds from the Housing Trust Fund in terms of local funding. And in terms of the opportunity cost, I think just to chime in on that one, we have one other project in the pipeline, West Gateway Place 2, and maybe you can, Raul can talk about
Correct. So as the council know, we also have been working on getting phase 2 of West Gateway Place off the ground. We are still working on trying to close the gap for that project, and we have been trying to accumulate our Housing Trust Fund for that project. So I guess that would answer the question about what other opportunity costs we would have. Potentially, it could affect the project. In terms of competition for low-income housing tax credits, at least at this point and in the last reformas that we have discussed with the developer for West Gateway Place 2. The project is contemplating 4% low-income housing tax credits, so it would not come into direct competition with the permanent supportive housing project on that end.
Councilmember Guerrero.
Yes. So I see you have listed 85 units. Is that the equivalent of 85 individuals, or is it more than that?
So the project will have studios and one-bedrooms.
Okay.
And our discussions with Mercy Housing has been that the project will be serving individuals. So, yes, it would be 85 individuals.
85 individuals. And are they all going to go through a process, because it's No Place Like Home? Is it a portion of those that qualify only for No Place Like Home, or is it the entire property?
Correct. So No Place Like Home would cover 41% of the units.
Okay.
No Place Like Home only allows up to 49% of the total project to be funded. The remaining units would be covered by conceivably the Section 8 vouchers
Okay.
and the low-income housing tax credits.
Okay. Have we considered looking at those that are receiving SSI to be able to be a part of? So the Section 8 is part of it, but other than those that, cannot make it on that list and have SSI, I don't know what the rental bracket is going to be.
So again, because the project is permanent supportive housing, they would have to meet the requirement or the definition of homeless or at risk of being homeless. So some of them could be on SSI.
They would be.
Correct.
Is there going to be any? So is there a revenue source that we can draw from to be able to backfill any and recoup any investment we make, if we make any investment from the Housing Trust Fund or Measure E?
Well, at this point, it would be the private foundation monies that would come in. Any additional private foundation monies. If you're asking about recuperating the funds that we will be investing. It could
only be the foundation money then that could recoup.
Correct. It would be private foundation money. Or any.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about, we have, so the current HEAP has been expended for the 2018-19 budget, but we're looking at it for 2019 and 20 for 1 year, but maybe, continuous. Have you explored what options you might have under that?
I don't know that the HEAP program is eligible for paying for actual housing construction.
Construction.
Yeah, but and just to add to what Raul just said, other grants would be the other option, and we'll continue to explore that as we go through the process.
And I think that we're looking at construction under the HEAP funding at this point. And if there's anything there that we should, tailor and include, because I think, cities are still struggling. And at today's press event, the governor is going to reevaluate his budget and expand it because he met with the 12 mayors. And so I think we need to be the voice on the table to be able to draw down that funding and maybe provide a loan and then, try to find a way to backfill it in some way as the project moves forward, because we need the project to move forward and then backfill it in a way that we can recoup our funding.
Correct, yeah.
But continue to look, so if it's only foundation, well, then we don't have a chance. But if we can recoup it in any other way, I don't know what your thoughts are, through state funding.
Correct, yeah. I mean, and the funding sources that I listed previously are the ones that we and the developer is considering at this point. But we are always in the lookout for additional funding sources that may be able to be used for the project, and the developer is doing the same thing. So the city manager is completely correct.
The
That
city manager is the expert here, so I'm just
He is now.
ask him all the questions. But I got to say, I want to, first of all, thank you very much for putting together a project that meets our most vulnerable residents' needs. And, this is a significant aspect of homelessness, is providing a place where we can provide supportive services, not just mental health and substance abuse treatment, but daily living skills, where folks just have a significant number of challenges, and it's going to be an environment like this that's going to help them get back on their feet and do much better in their lives. And we've seen that through our Mercy Coalition's effort in the warming center, where people that were on the street coming in, and once they found a stable environment, even if it was just for a few nights out of the 5 nights out of the week, they stopped drinking, they stopped taking drugs, and the rehabilitation started to occur. So there's a lot of hope for projects like this for people's lives to improve and be able to excel and do better. And I'm very appreciative that we are being involved in contributing to a significant humane program like this. So thank you for all your work.
All right, so we're still at the question stage, so I'm going to excuse you for now, where I will thank you, and go to public comment. And we just have one request, and that's by Lisa Baker. If you can persevere your way on up, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. Thank you for the kind words at the beginning. I really appreciate it. I would like to say that I can only persevere because I have the support of you. And the award may have come to me, but it was really for everyone in Yolo who helps us fulfill our mission. But thank you. I'm here to talk about the project tonight and to speak in support of it. We're pretty excited to be a co-developer, but also to be the funder in this project with 60 project-based vouchers. And I think people don't always recognize the value of vouchers. They're not a piece of paper. They're actually a financial commitment. And by tying them to the units, we're bringing approximately $8 million to this project over time on behalf of the Housing Authority and with the support of our Commissioner, Ms. Sandine. And just really devoted to the mission here in West Sacramento. Very exciting to work with you. We have a long relationship with the city in providing for folks, and really excited to bring project-based vouchers to the city. And those are my comments for this evening.
Terrific. Thank you so much. All right, this was the only public comment request we had, so we'll turn back to the council. Any further questions or discussion?
I make a few comments.
Member Pro Tem Orozco.
Thank you. Back in 2017, I had the great opportunity to go to the Mercy Housing Boulevard Court, permanent supportive housing over on Stockton Boulevard. It's an area where I grew up. And I was greatly impressed. This is an issue that hits me very hard. It's very close to home. And I have been very delighted to hear about the prospect of having a project like that in West Sacramento. Many people, we remark about the successes of Bridge to Housing, and back when, 2014? Just what an impact it made and what we learned from that project and what we can take from that to help our community move forward together. I look at the local policy preferences for Downtown Streets team, and I think about it when we discussed the Winter Warming Center contribution with our Mercy Coalition. And I think that a project like this could make a significant impact on reducing the impacts and incidences of homelessness in our community. So I'm really supportive of creating a place that revolves around CEPTED values, a place where people can get health services, both medical and behavioral, peer support networks, and housing stability counseling. Moreover, I think it's a great step for West Sacramento to allow people a place to live with dignity, to have them located in a place near a transportation hub, educational services, local retail establishments, places where they can access a continuum of services they need here, right with the social services office at 500 Jefferson. I think it's a great location, and I think that with a place like that for people to reintegrate into mainstream society and have access to what they need in order to effectively navigate our system, I think we could see a lot more positive results. I look at the pilot we did with Downtown Streets team, and just since October, we've been able to employ 6 people from working on the streets and beautifying our community to working in Raley's and Dollar Tree, and 3 that just got housed. Could you imagine what impact we could make with a program like this? So I'm really excited. I hope that this program does secure the financing it needs in order to move forward. But I see that you guys have worked very hard, and I appreciate the effort. And thank you for bringing the presentation before us.
Councilmember Sandin.
I think the actions tonight move us forward. And as was said, this has been a long range project. A lot of work has gone into this. There are a lot of partnerships and a lot of organizations stepping forward to support us. And I do think I'm optimistic that we'll land Sutter Health as a partner as we move forward. This does achieve many of the things that Councilmember Orozco, and probably hopefully more, that she's mentioned, and I'm excited that we're at this stage. And again, I think there'll be more ahead of us. This isn't the last action that will become before us on this project, but I do think this is incredibly needed. And our creative team here and our creative partners, even though this is a very complicated strategy, because this is a complicated issue, but I think this moves us in the right direction and moves us forward.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of this as well, and this is within the context of the city's overall, overall mission and responsibilities. These are not easy issues, both in the solving, but also in the where do we draw our lines? The cities in California were formed for the purposes of public safety, land use, a set of specific functions. The general welfare of our people, their health, their social services, what have you, was assigned from the beginning, from the Constitution of California to the counties of California, not to the cities. And so, one of the having served with several of the folks on that wall. This has constantly been, and it always will be, a question for the council and for the community. Like, where do we draw our responsibilities in terms of what we can do? Because our general fund, we still rely principally on property taxes and sales taxes and a few other things, just like we did before homelessness was an issue. Right, so this entire social phenomenon has emerged, and all of the attendant social ills, both for people experiencing homelessness and for the communities in which they live and their families and everything else, that major dislocation in society. And yet the revenue sources to support that work have not, there are very few of them. Right, so we don't really have the option of saying, we're no longer going to have police beats in a quarter of the city so that we can support additional health and social services. That's just not an option. We can't close 2 fire stations in order to do that. We can't not make investments in the levee system. We have our essential services to do our job primarily. And so with all of these, every time, even Bridge to Housing when I was there, it was a statewide pioneering project that accomplished so much. And at the end of it, I think our challenge as policymakers, but as a community, as the heart of the community, is what more can we do and who can do it. That's not always us, right? When we have a success, sometimes my natural inclination, like every other human being, is, but they also they don't have healthy foods, or they don't. This individual doesn't have that, and I'd like to solve that problem too, and that problem, and that problem, and that problem, and that. Just hard-nosed is not the city. It cannot be the city's job. The social welfare, social work function of society is located in the states and the counties, and we don't have the capacity to do it. So when we find ways like this to make a significant, and downtown streets, when we find ways to make a significant impact in the challenges that people are facing, while preserving our general fund obligation to support police, fire, parks, and all the duties that cities have, we have to jump on it, and that's what's happened on this project. Is we have moved forward with a gusto around delivering this, because it's housing, it's a structure, so we know how to do this. We know how to assemble land and build things, but this is more than that. Right, the permanent supportive. There's more to this than just the housing, and that isn't something that we have traditionally done. And so I'm taking this not to a conclusion because there is no handbook that we follow that says, fund a roof but don't fund food, or fund food but don't fund health. But I raise this because I think sometimes our humanity runs away with itself, and we're charged with the fiduciary responsibility of the city as well. And I think this council has been extraordinary at making this transition over time, and with very strong leadership to try to make a clarion call about what the needs are and what the sources are. Having said that, we approached this project like we really wanted to do it, and this is essential for achieving the kind of funding support that we have. 2 decades ago, when in prior city councils, affordable housing of any kind. There was no permanent supportive housing at the time, but affordable housing of any kind, it was a bad word in the city. And the city council would avoid saying it out loud, and only built it when it was legally forced to by a nonprofit legal services group or a court or a state law. Right? So only if we have to, right? And we're only going to build exactly what we have to. And that's where the community was at the time. I mean, it wasn't that the council was off playing cowboy. That's where the residents of this working class community were. A lot has changed since that time in the community, and the social and economic inequality that we're grappling with, the issues around homelessness and around affordability have happened, and our community's grown with it, and we have evolved. I think now, yesterday the Director of Housing and Community Development for the state of California was here for the Grand Gateway and Washington Sustainable Communities Project, and he repeatedly said, both in public and privately, that West Sacramento it's our favorite city to work with. When we get a new grant program assigned to us, or when we have a great idea, our first thing in the office is, I hope we can get West Sacramento to be like first out of the gate with this. That's a sea change from where we were 20 years ago. And it's because of that attitude that we're building affordable housing of all kinds now, because we want to, because it's essential for the health of our city, the economic development of our city, the public safety of our community, all the things that are our job. It's essential, and the people of this city know that. And so we're all in on it. And the investment that the people voted for, small though it was, in inclusive economic development and Measure N, and for homelessness and Measure E, is a sign of that. And it's one of the reasons both the council support, the staff support, and the community support, as evidenced by things like those 2 ballot measures, is seen by Sutter Health Foundation and by our other partners, Partnership Health, this is a place to invest, because when somebody that has the record of West Sacramento and is passionate about achieving it, they're much more likely to get it done. So most cities don't get this kind of investment from health plans and other foundations. We are getting it in this case because we've been creative, because we've been smart about it, and because our heart is in this. In every possible way, and it's also why we have won the No Place Like Home grants as well. So just kudos to everyone involved in this, around the council, in the community. This is a place that has really evolved in really profound ways, and notwithstanding what I said at the beginning about the importance of keeping keeping some sense of boundary, that is our fiduciary responsibility here. I think this is a project that really demonstrates what we can do. There's no general fund money in this project, not a penny. So this is not detracting from funding for Kids Zone or for your local firefighter or your local parks maintenance worker or sewer plant worker. Right? This is not detracting from any of that. And it's actually, as you said, Raul, it's a very small amount of city money at all. The leverage that we're achieving here is like 1 to 30 or something for that money, which is pretty powerful. And that's money that's for affordable housing, right? This is not general money. It's money that's specifically and exclusively set aside for affordable housing, and we are achieving incredible leverage thanks to the state and the tax credit funds and potentially the 2 health plans as well. And I think the other reason why we need to take this action tonight and move expeditiously is the CDBG funds. In a typical year, we might think, well, the CDBG funds have an opportunity cost. Maybe we could spend them on something else. I think all of us would argue even then this is the right way to spend them. But this case, we're using CDBG funds that we have to spend soon. Right? We don't have a year and a half to think about what is there a better use. If we don't spend this $1.04 million right now on this project, we lose it altogether. So just as pure, fiscal common sense, this is a really smart move to keep $1 million of that federal CDBG money in our community. When I first read it, I did have the question, since President Trump yet again this week proposed eliminating both the home and CDBG programs. But the response from members of Congress was just like it was last time, instantly. That's dead on arrival. So I'm not concerned about the long-term financing here. And as I say, in this case, the CDBG money is money we already have. It would not be removed by a president's budget into the future. So this is a really fantastic financing strategy. Of all the financing strategies I've seen for affordable housing, it's actually the least complicated one I think I've ever seen, partly because of the foundations, but it's really creative and smart and appreciated. Now, this is for 85 units for individuals getting housing, and that number should sound familiar to us, because it's pretty much the number of unsheltered homeless individuals in West Sacramento, according to the annual census that several of our colleagues participated in, and it has been for a couple of years. We have had stable unsheltered housing numbers in West Sacramento for several years now. There's not been an explosion due to a lot of reasons, and one of them is at the back of the room, Mark Sawyer, and the terrific work that he's doing as the city's homeless coordinator. So at least it's theoretically possible that every single one of the unsheltered homeless individuals in our city could have permanent supportive housing under this project. Now, of course, there's all sorts of eligibility requirements, and some folks aren't ready to make the transition into housing. So we're not trying to put Mark out of business, although we are. We would love to put Mark out of business in the work that he has to do today. But I'm marking that because 85 units may not seem like it's all that much for $32 million. It's $375,000 per unit. But it's precisely the right scale for what we need in terms of addressing the challenge in our community, particularly with the local preference policy, because you could now at least imagine having adequate, good quality, but enough permanent supportive housing in the community to be able to really make a difference, if not ultimately resolve the serious problem of homelessness in our community and elsewhere. So thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
All right, so it's been moved by Councilmember
I'll second
Guerrero
that.
and seconded by Councilmember Sandin, the recommended action. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Council calendar, Ms. Berlin.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Some items and events that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. This Saturday is the I Street Bridge Lantern Festival, and that's going to be at 201 C Street on the I Street Bridge. That's from 7 to 9 p.m. Next Wednesday, March 27th, is our Coffee with a Cop, and that will be in the evening from 6 to 8, and that'll be at Mod Pizza in the IKEA Court. And then coming up April 15th to the 18th is the Police Department's annual Spring Break Boxing Camp, and that'll be from 9 to 3 that week of spring break. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Questions on the calendar? City manager report.
I have a quick question.
Oh, sorry.
Is the police chief involved with the boxing camp? Will he be participating?
Yeah.
Oh,
Does
good.
he have his gloves?
Is he boxing the mayor pro tem, who is a professional kickboxing instructor?
I'd like to see that. Thank you, sir.
She only needs 1 foot. All right, city manager report.
No reports tonight, thank you.
Nothing capital today?
Oh, sure. If you want me to talk about EIFDs.
I think we would love nothing better.
I did testify today on the bill I mentioned last time, SB 128 by Senator Bell, that would eliminate the vote requirement for issuing EIFD bonds. Happy to report it made it out of committee. It's on its way to the Senate floor. Next, there was an amendment that included a protest provision at the initial setup of an EIFD for enough property owners or residents to file protest to initiate an election. But that it's a very high bar. We've already passed that threshold because we have our district formed already, so it wouldn't affect West Sacramento's EIFD. But on a statewide level, it's a really big deal. So thank you.
All right, city attorney report. All right, staff direction from members of the council. And we have no future agenda item requests. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.